what do we do now? The election is over. And whether your candidate won or lost, where does that leave real estate? Are we headed to a brighter market, or is everything about to go downhill? The most recent data we've got from Florida Realtors shows September 2024 versus September of 2023. The October data will be reported at the end of November. Closed sales are down from that time last year by 16.4%, as are sales prices, which dropped 5.2%. The median time to sell a home in Alachua County increased by 51.6% year over year, from 64 to 97 days on average. And the supply of inventory for single-family detached homes in Alachua County has increased from 2.6 months of inventory to 3.8 months of inventory, which is an increase of 46.2% year over year from last September. Remember, the data from Florida Realtors is in arrears, meaning we are reviewing the previous month's data once all of the information can be collected. This is what we call a lagging indicator, but it gives us a perspective of what has been happening year over year. Prices have shifted downward. Homes are taking longer to sell, which means that there now are way more homes on the market. So what are we meant to do with this information? I have been calling this market the real estate sandwich because lots of separate things have coincided and layered on top of one another to create this most recent market. Interest rates are still fluctuating. We saw them get back up into the 7s right before the election in October. They have since somewhat worked their way back down into the high 6s, but there's some volatility there. And anytime there's volatility and fluctuation, that causes people to be uncertain. And when people are feeling uncertain, they typically don't want to make any major life decisions unless they're forced to. Leading up to this year's election, the uncertainty and the anxiety was high. Historically, before elections, markets dip. This has been proven over and over and over again. People tend to put their hands in their pockets and wait and see. What we also know historically is that real estate typically sees a bump after an election because people are now more clear and certain on what the next 4 years looks like, regardless of who wins. There's more certainty, whether you think it's good news or bad news, but that certainty leads people into making their next decision on where to move. When it comes down to it, if you're a seller and you've been trying to sell a property over the last 90 plus days, it's been tough. Homes are sitting longer, and many of them with few to no showings. Are homes still selling? Of course. Homes will sell in any market, just not as many, not as fast, for not as much money. On average, homes in Alachua County right now aren't seeing an offer until about the 53rd day on the market, which is an increase of 150% to this time last year. And that's just the average. It is not uncommon right now to see houses sitting on the market for over 100 days with no offers in sight. I actually saw one in our MLS the other day that had a days on market count of over 300 days. But if you are selling a property or you're getting ready to sell a property, I believe that the biggest hurdle is over. As I've been saying in my earlier videos and to my customers all over Alachua County, it doesn't matter who wins. Post-election, real estate markets always see an increase because there's a lot of pent-up demand that now needs to be serviced. The same people who wanted to wait and see a few months ago still want to buy a home. They just didn't really want to do it in September and October when everything was so up in the air. So you may be asking yourself, how on earth can you predict that things are going to get better? Well, I can't, but history sure as heck can. If you look back, 7 out of the last 8 elections, prices went up. The only year that housing prices did not go up was 2008. And the reason for that was we were on the cusp of the greatest recession that we'd seen in a generation. And if you go back even further, 9 out of the last 11 elections, we have seen the number of home sales go up post-election. It was only 2 times in the 80s that we didn't see the number of home sales increase after the president was elected. So if you're a seller right now, history would predict that things are about to get better. And things are about to get better because buyer activity is about to increase. Now, if you are a buyer, I would say there's a bit of sense of urgency to get going right now. I have been saying literally for months that buyers have a huge opportunity to take advantage of right now. The longer that you wait, the more that other buyers are going to decide to get back into the market. And once there become more buyers in the market, what we know is that that increases competition. When competition increases, a few things happen. Prices tend to go up because if a house that had no offers suddenly has 3, that's a very different negotiation game. And when house prices go up and competition increases, there then tend to be a lot less homes on the market that are available because they're selling. And this is where realtors make money for their clients. I've got a buyer who was able to put a house under contract in October for almost $20,000 below asking price. But on top of that, we were also able to negotiate upwards of $10,000 in repairs prior to closing. He's got himself a great house that he got for less than the neighborhood comps were selling for because of the current market conditions. The house sat for months with no offers. So the seller was very motivated to make it work because there was a huge lack of other activity from buyers. All it would take for this entire scenario to change for my buyer would have been competition. If, for example, a second offer had come in when we were negotiating, my buyer would have had to make a decision: risk losing the house or increase your purchase price. And let's say there was a backup offer. That would not have given us nearly as much leverage to negotiate the repairs that we were able to get done for him prior to closing. They say timing is everything. And when it comes to real estate, it is about impossible to time the market perfectly. The best time for a deal, honestly, has probably already passed because you would have needed to go under contract in September or October. But I truly do believe that the next best time to get a deal is going to be between now and the end of the year to the beginning of the new year. Because once we get well into 2025, I do see signs that the market is going to recover and prices are going to increase because buyers are going to be coming back into the market. And don't take my word for it. History shows this to us again and again and again. So now that we have the backing of historical data, how do we handle the nuance of today's market? Namely, interest rates. They have risen pretty steadily over the last several years to quell inflation. But the good news is that it's working. The inflation rate, which had gotten all the way up to an annual average of 7 in 2021 and 8 in 2022, is now dropping down. As of November 13th, the latest inflation report put the US at 2.6 for the month of October, which for the year to date so far puts us at an annual average of below 3. That's some positive progress. And while that is great news, if interest rates drop too fast, inflation is going to rise again and we'll be right back where we started. So it will be somewhat unpredictable for the foreseeable future. Although if there was any one person that could predict interest rates with complete accuracy, they'd be long retired. Experts seem to think that while it's going to be fickle, the overall trend of interest rates is that they should be easing down. As Hannah Jones, senior economic research analyst at realtor.com said, rates have shown considerable volatility lately and may continue to do so. Overall, we still expect a downward long-term mortgage rate trend. At the beginning of November, the Fed cut the key interest rate by a 1/4 point. Now, remember, the Fed rate is not the same as the mortgage rate, though the mortgage rate does tend to mirror what the Fed rate does. Immediately following that Fed rate cut, we did see mortgage rates dip back into about the 6.9% range for a 30-year conventional loan. So do I think it's a good time to buy? I do. If, it's a big if, you are qualified. I don't care if interest rates are 1%. If you cannot afford your down payment and closing costs and the maintenance of your home, I don't think it's a good time to buy. And I wouldn't suggest that you buy a home until you're financially ready. But if you are financially ready and you are wondering if now's a good time to buy, I really believe that the remainder of 2024 could provide some excellent opportunities for buyers. It's not to say that buying in the spring is horrible, but it is to say that if you choose to do so, be prepared to possibly pay more and deal with a lot more competition. So let's flip that. Should you sell right now? Everyone's circumstances are different. If there's a life circumstance that has you needing to sell right now, I would suggest you do everything in your power with your agent to price it right. Do not test the market. Do not try a price to see what's gonna happen. Do not leave room for negotiation. Talk with your realtor and then price it to sell, because then it will. If you are looking for the best time to sell, the future is unclear, so I can't tell you exactly what that looks like. I can say, historically in our area, that spring and summer tend to yield higher prices and more competition. But that also means you may be competing with other sellers who are thinking the same thing you are. And there's definitely something to be said for being one of the only houses for sale in your neighborhood rather than being one of 10. Bottom line, whether you're a buyer or a seller, you need to have a strategy and it needs to align with your timeline. I have a link in the description where you can set up a free discovery call. It will help you to gain some clarity on how the election has maybe affected your specific plans, and we can begin to come up with a strategy and a plan moving forward so you're clear on the best next step. And if you're thinking about relocating, I have put together a great compilation of all of my best videos about why you should move to Gainesville. If you're thinking about where to go next, put Gainesville on your radar because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.